Tonight, breaking news as we come on the air in the West. Europe and Canada strike back against the U.S. and President Trump's tariffs. Also tonight, 1,300 federal workers fired from the Department of Education. The mother trapped in her car under a bridge for 6 days screaming for help. And the scrubbed launch just a short time ago right here in Florida. They were hoping to get those astronauts home. First tonight, the retaliation against the U.S. just hours after President Trump imposed 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into the U.S. from Canada and Europe. What they've now done in response tonight, what this now means for American consumers. And the new polls tonight, Americans souring on President Trump's handling of the economy. The polling worse on tariffs. Also tonight, the Trump administration gutting the Department of Education. Nearly half the staff now gone, more than 1,300 fired. The concern across the country from parents who depend on student loans and financial aid to get their kids through college and other programs their children depend on. Tonight, what the new Secretary of Education is now saying. Tonight, the sheriff who now says a person of interest has been identified in the case of that missing Pittsburgh college student on spring break. What authorities in the Dominican Republic are now saying tonight about the young man who was believed to be the last person to see her alive. Tonight, that mother trapped in her car for 6 days with broken bones, veering off the road under a bridge. The cars driving over the bridge could not hear her screams. How she survived this. Tonight, hundreds of supporters demanding the release of a former Columbia grad student and pro-Palestinian activist arrested by ICE agents, saying this is an attack on free speech. His wife, a grad student 8 months pregnant, pleading for his release tonight. The Trump administration calling him a national security threat. Tonight, the breaking news just a short time ago right here in Florida. You'll remember those 2 astronauts left in space. They were supposed to be there for a week. Instead, they've now been there nearly a year. The SpaceX launch scrubbed just a short time ago. It was part of the effort to get them home. So what happens now? We're also tracking a powerful storm, heavy rain, possible flooding, severe storms moving into the Midwest and then the Northeast. And the record-breaking heat returning. Lee Goldberg has the forecast. Late today, we've learned of an explosion at a senior living facility, reports of multiple injuries. And tonight, Made in America is back. How you can get a piece of your favorite team just in time for opening day.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
And good evening tonight from Orlando, Florida. We have a lot to get to tonight, and we begin with the president's trade war escalating tonight. This evening, the retaliation against the United States, Canada, and the European Union responding quickly, just hours after President Trump's 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States. Canada, the largest supplier of steel to the U.S., slapping new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods that are sold in Canada. And the 27 countries of the European Union imposing retaliatory tariffs on up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods sold in Europe, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Kentucky bourbon. President Trump with the Irish Prime Minister visiting the White House today. The president suggesting his tariffs won't stop here, saying, of course, I'm going to respond. And tonight here, the new poll showing 56% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. The number's even worse on the president's tariffs. ABC's chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce leading us off tonight.
Today, President Trump side by side in the Oval Office with the head of the Irish government as his escalating trade war tests the U.S.-European relationship.
I'm not happy with the European Union, I want to tell you. And we're going to win that. We're going to win that financial battle.
After Trump imposed those sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, the European Union retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods. Trump making it clear this isn't over, vowing to respond in kind with sweeping retaliatory tariffs early next month.
They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union, but it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Canada also striking back with new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, mostly steel and aluminum, but also computers and sporting goods. After weeks of whiplash, Trump threatening tariffs, imposing some and walking back others, many Americans are feeling the uncertainty. In Swisher, Iowa, distillery owner Jeff Quint says it's paralyzing.
The bourbon industry is going to be collateral damage in this tariff war. I don't really think there's any way around that.
And he's not alone. Tonight, the majority of Americans, 61%, now say they disapprove of how the president is handling tariffs. 56% say they disapprove of his handling of the economy overall. But the president has dismissed those concerns tonight, saying he has the right to change course.
On tariffs, there's been a lot of on and off, some inconsistency.
There's no inconsistency. I'm not like a block that just, I won't delay. It's called flexibility. It's not called inconsistency. It's called flexibility.
Now, as the president defends his tariffs over on Capitol Hill tonight, the government is inching closer to a shutdown after Senate Democrats announced they will not support the House-passed funding bill. Now, certainly no one wants to see the government shut down, but Senate Democrats say they're concerned that the current bill would give the Trump administration too much leeway to continue overhauling the government. Instead, they're now hoping for a short-term solution, but the clock is ticking. The government set to shut down Friday at midnight. David.
All right, Mary Bruce leading us off again tonight. Mary, thank you. Of course, the other major headline tonight, the massive firings at the Department of Education. More than 1,300 workers now fired. Tonight, about half of the department staff now gone. And tonight, the concern across this country from parents who count on student loans and financial aid to get their kids through college and on other programs their children depend on. Here's Rachel Scott.
Tonight, the Department of Education effectively gutted, slashing nearly half its workforce. More than 1,300 workers fired.
Now, Department of Education's, maybe more so than any other place, has a lot of people that can be cut. They're, number one, not showing up to work. Number two, they're not doing a good job.
The Department of Education oversees federal loans and financial aid, which millions of students apply for each year to pay for college. The agency also provides funding for students with disabilities and from low-income families. New Education Secretary Linda McMahon promising those programs won't be impacted.
The outward-facing programs, the grants, the appropriations that come from Congress, all of that are being met. And none of that's going to fall through the cracks.
But the nation's largest teachers union says students will pay the price.
It's going to have a real impact on real students, on real schools, on real families across this country. Higher class sizes, less resources for our students and families.
That's something Cassandra Bell in Kentucky fears for her son Conrad, who has autism.
If they dismantle his program, there's nowhere for him to go. Especially these parents, we've been talking, trying to figure out, what are we going to do with our kids if this goes? We're waiting with bated breath to see what's going to happen.
And amid all this concern we're now hearing tonight, Rachel, what's the administration saying?
David, sources tell me the administration is currently in the process of moving some of the work under the Department of Education, like those federal student loan programs, to other agencies, including the Department of Treasury. David.
All right. Our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, with us here tonight. Rachel, thank you. We turn now to the investigation into the disappearance of that 20-year-old Pittsburgh college student who disappeared while on spring break in the Dominican Republic. Tonight, a sheriff here in the U.S. now says a person of interest has been identified in this case. And what local authorities are now saying about the young man who was believed to be the last person to see her alive in the Dominican Republic. ABC's Ariel Reshef is there again tonight.
Tonight, helicopters hovering over the water in Punta Cana as authorities search for missing 20-year-old University of Pittsburgh student Sodiksha Konanki. Authorities combing CCTV footage and interviewing staff at the Rio Republica Hotel where she and 5 friends were staying.
This is the beach where Sodiksha disappeared, but just down the coastline, 3 foreign tourists died from drowning in these waters back in January.
Konanki lives in Loudoun County, Virginia. The sheriff there at one point called the man who was with her the night she vanished a person of interest. But authorities in the Dominican Republic say that is not the case, and the man is cooperating with the investigation as a witness. Dominican police sources say he is not a suspect, and so far, no evidence of violence.
David, at this point, there are no suspects in this case. Police say that they have spoken to Sodiksha's friends and to that man, and they continue to hunt for answers. David.
Ariel Reshef reporting again tonight. Ariel, thank you. We turn now to the remarkable survival story tonight. The Indiana mother of 3 found alive after being trapped in her car for 6 days with broken bones after veering off the road and ending up under a bridge. None of the drivers overhead could hear her screams, and the one thing she did to survive this for days. Here's Stephanie Ramos.
Tonight, an incredible story of survival. An Indiana woman found alive after spending nearly a week trapped inside her car, declared missing by her family.
We had thought the worst.
Brianna Castle, a mother of 3, was driving late at night last Wednesday when she fell asleep, her car veering off into a ditch underneath a bridge. Castle stuck inside with several broken bones.
She hasn't ate for days. She could hear cars going by and screaming.
Her car hidden from view, the 41-year-old unable to reach her phone.
The only way she was able to survive was using her hoodie and dipping it into the water in the ditch and sucking the water.
Then yesterday, after 6 days, someone nearby finally spotting the vehicle, making his way down the embankment with his supervisor, who's also a local fire chief.
She was very conscious, very alert, very aware of how severe her injuries were.
Castle airlifted to a Chicago hospital for treatment. Her family grateful she's alive.
I'm so glad she was found alive, and I just can't wait to hug her and kiss her.
Castle remains in the hospital tonight, and David, officials say she is in serious condition. David.
An extraordinary story, Stephanie. Thank you. Tonight, hundreds of supporters are demanding the release of a former Columbia grad student and pro-Palestinian activist arrested by ICE agents, saying this is an attack on free speech. His American wife, 8 months pregnant, pleading for his release tonight. The Trump administration calling him a national security threat. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Down with deportation! Tonight, with hundreds of protesters in New York City clamoring for the release of pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil, a federal judge is now weighing his bid for freedom. Khalil, a former Columbia grad student, was the lead negotiator during demonstrations that took over the campus last spring. He's a green card holder with no criminal record, but his lawyer says federal immigration agents identified, targeted, and detained Khalil simply because he advocated for Palestinians.
This is an American, this is a U.S. person. He's a lawful permanent resident who's been separated from his family.
The Trump administration argues it has the right to deport Khalil, calling him a national security threat.
This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with.
When you go to a college campus, you incite protesting and locking down, taking over buildings and damaging property and handing out leaflets for Hamas, who is a terrorist organization. Coming to this country either on a visa or becoming a resident alien is a great privilege. But there are rules associated with that.
Khalil's wife, who's 8 months pregnant, was in the front row at the hearing today, her lawyer reading a statement.
It's shameful that the United States government continues to hold him because he stood for the rights and lives of his people. I demand his immediate release and return to our family.
His lawyers say they've been unable to even talk to Khalil privately since his arrest. David, the judge said they must be allowed a phone call tonight, but for the foreseeable future, Khalil will remain in custody at an ICE detention facility in Louisiana. David?
Our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky, with us tonight. Aaron, thank you. We turn next tonight to the launch that was scrubbed just a short time ago right here in Florida. It was all part of the effort to get to those 2 astronauts left in space on the International Space Station. You'll remember they were sent on that 8-day mission, but they've now been in space for nearly a year. So what happens now? ABC's Faith Abube at Cape Canaveral right here in Florida tonight.
Tonight, just minutes before launch, SpaceX scrapping a mission that was intended to help bring home 2 astronauts left in space for 9 months after their 8-day mission was unexpectedly extended.
Unfortunately, we're not going today.
SpaceX citing a hydraulic issue. On Tuesday, the astronauts are discussing the long-awaited return home.
The prime moment is when those parachutes open. When you return to Earth and your parachutes open, that is a great feeling.
The 4 crew members were in the capsule ready to go. Their mission was to replace the current team, including astronaut Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore, who arrived to the International Space Station on Boeing Starliner spacecraft back in June, marking its first crew test flight. But their 8-day mission in space stretching to nearly a year after NASA and Boeing brought the Starliner back to Earth without the 2 astronauts due to technical issues. And despite the disappointment tonight, David, SpaceX is hoping to have the capsule back in orbit as soon as possible. Their next opportunity is tomorrow evening if they can fix the hydraulic issue and the weather cooperates. David.
Faith Abube at the Kennedy Space Center right here in Florida. Faith, thank you. Tonight, 24 hours after Ukraine agreed to that U.S. plan for a 30-day ceasefire with Russia, President Trump now with a warning for Russia if they don't sign on, saying he could do things financially that would be, quote, devastating for Russia. Meantime, Russia is advancing on the battlefield. Vladimir Putin making a rare visit to Russia's Kursk region. Putin in uniform today, just before U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff arrives for the Trump administration in Moscow for talks on that potential ceasefire. When we come back tonight, we're tracking a powerful storm in the west, also severe weather moving into the Midwest and the Northeast, and this record-breaking heat makes a return. So Lee Goldberg has the forecast. Also, we learned late today of an explosion at a senior living facility. There are reports of multiple injuries tonight, and the new images posted online, the chaotic fight and shooting erupting at a major American airport, what authorities are now saying in just a moment here. Tonight here, we're tracking this powerful new cross-country storm, heavy rain, flooding, and possible mudslides taking aim at the west, then severe storms moving from the Midwest right into the Northeast, and record heat then returning. Let's get right back to Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg from WABC in New York. Lee?
David, the warm temperatures in the east not waiting to the official start of spring next week. We could hit 80 in Cincinnati, maybe a record high in Memphis. After a brief cool down in the northeast, warms up over the weekend. In the west, the latest cross-country storm soaking the Bay Area. There's a flood watch in Southern California tonight and early Thursday. We're concerned about significant debris flow and flash flooding. It's heavy snow in the mountains. Meanwhile, severe weather will reach the Midwest by the time we get to Friday night. A tornado threat from places like St. Louis down to Memphis. The severe weather gets to the East Coast over the weekend. David?
Tracking it right here again tonight, Lee. Thank you. When we come back here, new images of the fight and shooting breaking out at a major U.S. airport. The pictures also coming in, the explosion at a senior facility. And then tonight, Made in America is back. How to get a piece of your favorite team and before opening day to help some American workers. To the index of other news tonight, new images emerging of the chaotic shooting at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Video posted online showing a fight erupting inside Terminal 2, erupting in gunfire, then spilling outside. Police say one person was wounded, dozens of shell casings found at the scene. The victim is in stable condition tonight. No arrests have been made. Tonight in Denver, firefighters responding to reports of an explosion and fire at an assisted living facility. Authorities say that explosion happening inside the building. At least 8 people hospitalized. 87 residents were forced out, many in wheelchairs. There was also a transformer fire right near that facility. The cause of the explosion and that fire are both under investigation. When we come back here tonight, Made in America is back. And what do they do with all those Major League Baseball bats? How to get a piece of your favorite team before opening day in a moment.
ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, sponsored by Vivgard Hytrulo and Vivgard.
Finally tonight here, Made in America is back with a Major League idea, celebrating your favorite team and celebrating American workers.